back.
Mic check, mic check, mic check. Oh man, we are back. We are officially live. Welcome to the Kickin the Real podcast. I am your host, Andy Diosa. If you're a first time listener, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. If you're a multiple time listener, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. We got a special episode today. I got a brother of mine in the building. It just felt right. Copa America is on the horizon, so we had to dive into all things Copa America. With me today, my brother, who has worked at ESPN, NBC Telemundo, does his freelance gig for many people, putting on, beautiful things on the internet, putting out beautiful things for you guys to consume on social media. And like I said, one of my brothers, Peruvian. So we'll get into all of that, but I just wanted to just a quick introduction there. My brother Diego Montalvan. Thanks for coming through the kick with me, man. How you feeling?
I feel like that was a great introduction. I don't even know what to say now, brother. Damn. No, honestly, it's great to be here. I was waiting for my turn. I knew at some point it would come. But no, honestly, you've been doing great with this, and I'm just glad to be a part of it now.
Yes, sir, man. I appreciate the love and support. Diego's been, supportive since day one, and Diego and I go way back. And we've done stuff for his YouTube channel as well. Please go check that out. I'll make sure everything is booked in the YouTube description and all that good info. But Diego's been killing it in the soccer world, and like I mentioned, we've talked about Copa America on camera, off camera for a while, and we were both very excited for this tournament. So it was perfect to get him on. Perfect moment. If you're watching on YouTube, he has a beautiful Peru jersey on. I am wearing an orange shirt because it's a Nike LA shirt, but for some reason Colombia is wearing orange in the tournament. So that's the reason I'm wearing orange today. I didn't feel like putting the jersey on. But anyway, I'm gonna start this like I started with every guest. I want an origin story. I really want the people to know just what got you into working in sports media, because I know it wasn't a plan initially.
Yeah, I think with a lot of people that work in sports, or anyone that's been a sports fanatic as a kid, you want to be an athlete, a player. You think you can make it pro. And I guess it came to a realization point where you're like, This is way harder than just being like, I'm gonna be good at something." No, you got a dedication, sacrifice, and it just I wasn't up to the standards, I guess. So I realized that quickly, and I knew that I wanted to be in sports because of my love for the game. And at the time I was working in marketing, so I said, I'm just going to go into sports marketing. But one of my teachers was like, no, you should also be doing like communications journalism. And I said, okay. So I minored in that, thinking I'm going to do sports marketing and minor in this. And then as soon as I got out, ESPN came calling, and I jumped on it, and that's how it really all began.
The start of a beautiful thing. Diego and I spent some time together in Bristol, Connecticut. Fun times, fun
Oh
times.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't let Diego fool you, man. Diego's a baller too. We've had the pleasure of playing soccer on many occasions. So great soccer player on top of that. But yeah, no, it's good to just get the origin story and hear behind the scenes, because like you mentioned, a lot of people that work in this industry, it's a different story for everybody. And I think it's very unique, especially for people that are listening that may want to get into this or just are curious. Like there's no one right way to go about it. There's a lot of different paths that you could take. And it's cool that, you mentioned you were in marketing, and it's like, all right, I'm going to make this shift. It's never really too early or too late. So I love that. Another thing that Diego does is coaching on the side as well, and there's an interesting story around that as well that I wanted to start the podcast with, because he was part of a pretty cool thing called the Twinning Project down in South Florida and Miami, and I'll let you explain it, because I was very happy when I saw my boy's face pop up on the local news. So I'll let you explain kind of what that looks like for Miami FC, and what that was like.
Yeah. So I've been now coaching kids professionally in soccer for about 6 years. It all just kind of fell onto my lap, honestly. Once I had my first kid, he started playing competitive. They asked me to coach, and little by little, I started getting my certifications and my licenses, and just kind of kept moving up. But I always kept it at bay. That's kind of like a part-time side thing that I like to do. And unfortunately, last year I was laid off, so I had more time. So I dedicated way more time to coaching. Then came this project that fell onto our lap at Miami FC, where I'm coaching, and they said, would you like to coach at a prison? And I said, wait, what? Like it was I was really like, it was something that I had never heard of. But I was intrigued, so I said, let's do it. And basically we ran a 16-week program with inmates, kind of teaching them how they could coach kids, which in turn, in coaching and soccer and in sports, there's a lot of valuable life lessons. And it was great to see because, for me or for us, because there was two coaches, me and someone else, they didn't tell us anything about these guys. We go in there and we only know their last name, inmate, and their last name. But we got to meet these people for who they are as persons, right? We don't know what they did to get in there or whatnot. And little by little, we start seeing, certain characteristics, certain remorse, change in these guys, or them wanting to be able to connect with their kids on the outside that are now playing soccer and whatnot. And it was really unbelievable to be part of that and to see that little bit of change in these guys. So yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, man, it sounds like I said, sounds like it's a very cool experience. And just seeing that story on the news and being able to hear from you kind of what that's like is it's awesome because there's so many layers to a lot of things. And you kind of just think about sport and how a sport can change somebody's life or can teach you those valuable lessons like you mentioned. And there's so much behind it than just the physical activity or the competition aspect that you could teach just by being somebody that's there and kind of showing people what to do. So I love that, man. I love that. It's really something cool. I have a friend here in LA that does something similar on the basketball tip, and it's really cool to see. So man, props to you for doing that. And like once again, like I mentioned, I'll have all that information linked in the YouTube description and bio, so you guys can check that out if you want to. I recommend you do. Diego's here to talk about Copa America, so we're gonna jump right into it because the tournament is upon us. 2016 was here in the U.S. and it was a lot of fun, just traveling around and going to different games. This is a little different. I feel like the hype maybe is not on the same level, but I think if you're internally invested, the closer it gets, which is now just a week away as of this recording, you feel it, and the friendlies that are going on, and just the conversation that's happening. The excitement is going to grow, and then obviously Euros coinciding with that as well. It's going to be a fun summer of soccer. So we're going to start with I'm going to start with the groups first because just so people that are listening kind of get this in their mind. So if we're mentioning groups and you kind of know who's where, because I probably need this as a reminder myself. So Group A, Argentina, who is the reigning Copa America champions, Canada, Chile, and Diego's Peru. That is Group A. Group B, oh, mind you, Group A starts the tournament. It's Argentina and Canada down in Atlanta next Thursday. I forget the date, but Thursday.
20th.
Group B, Ecuador, Jamaica, Mexico, Venezuela. That is Group B. Group C, Bolivia. Shout out to Adrian. United States, Panama, and Uruguay. And Group D, where my interest is at, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, and Paraguay. So those are the groups. There's some pretty good competition as you would imagine in Copa America. But we're gonna start as we should with the reigning champions and Argentina, who should be the favorites for obvious reasons. One, Lionel Messi is still playing at a very high level of MLS fans or just fans of soccer know that if you watch him with Inter Miami this season. But there's something to be said about Argentina because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if you think otherwise, like Messi's pressure has just been alleviated so much now. Obviously, winning Copa America in 2021, then winning the World Cup, like it's like a weight off his shoulders. Now, I'm not saying there's not pressure on Argentina because there always is, but I don't feel like they're kind of coming into this with that same like hunger mentality. Like Messi said it himself, and he doesn't speak much. He just had the interview with ESPN Argentina, and he said, I've won everything that there is to win. Like, I don't need to win anymore. And I'm not saying, once again, that that's a bad thing, but I just feel like it's a different approach for this Argentina team, which is still very talented. But maybe that could open the doors for others. So what are you thinking about Argentina and how they're coming into this tournament?
Listen, I fully agree with you. One, Argentina, yeah, they're the favorites. Why? As you mentioned, they're the reigning Copa America champions, the reigning world champions. So why not? And obviously, they still have Lionel Messi, who even if he is playing in the MLS, even if you downplay it, he's still doing it on a consistent basis. Now, yeah, the backpack is off. They have no more that weight that they needed to win. That Lionel Messi needed a trophy because they already got the two top trophies that Argentina could have won. So now it's about playing for fun, playing for that freedom. I think the biggest thing here, or the reason why I think Argentina may still be favorites is, again, why not? They're the reigning champions. But two is because Messi, this could be his last dance, right? And not just that, but Di Maria. It's definite last dance. He already said it. After this tournament, I'm done with the selección with Albiceleste. So and we all know how pivotal Di Maria has been in finals for Argentina. So I think you put that alongside the group that they've built with some of these youngsters that are obviously playing in Europe and playing at high levels. Like Julian Alvarez, McAllister, Lo Celso. They got a squad still.
Yeah, they got a squad, and I like that you mentioned that it potentially being the last dance for Messi and Di Maria. Because the flip side of what I presented is that because they have that pressure off their back, they might be playing a lot freer, and that might translate into a lot better quality of soccer for them, and just a lot easier path. And there's curiosity of the final being in Miami, and the path maybe not being hard for Argentina. So if I had to guess right now, I'm gonna write them in to be there for that final in Miami. But it's a tournament, anything could happen. But yeah, it's Argentina. We don't have to say too much about it because a squad is a squad, and when you have players of that caliber on your team, like you mentioned, of stature that have done it in finals, like those two, or younger players that are playing at a high level, like how many trophies has Julian Alvarez already won? It's insane the kind of accolades these players already have in their careers. So there's no reason why you should doubt Argentina, and it is what it is. I think I learned my lesson in the last World Cup where I'm like, I don't know why everybody's so like up on them. I didn't think they were gonna be that good, and then they lose that game to Saudi Arabia, and it's like, see, like they're not that good, and then they were like, nah, we're still that good, and they just ran through everybody else. And granted, like the final against France, it was a crazy game, but those qualities, that team will not lose it. I don't think anytime soon. And just having Messi on the field and how much that means to them is huge. So Argentina will be the favorites, and for sure somebody to keep an eye on because you're gonna want to watch them regardless when they play. Their little their little friendlies, pre-tournament friendlies are all on TV here in the States, and they're gonna lead into this as much as they can and as they should. So we'll go from Argentina to another powerhouse in South America, Brazil, who we should, I don't know, want to say should. I guess it's just slotted as a favorite because of, I guess, name, history, all that. And I'm not saying that the team is not capable of winning the tournament, but as we've talked about before, if you're paying attention, this Brazil team has been a little underwhelming. The CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying table will show you that. The results there will show you that, and we know that that is a very hard region to qualify in. So those qualifying games are like tournament games. They have a little bit of everything, feistiness, and teams trying to defend a certain way and not trying to be too risky. We saw them tie or draw rather against the U.S. national team yesterday, and there was a lot of conversation around that after what happened to the U.S. versus Colombia. To me, a lot of that stuff doesn't really matter. This is kind of just like a jab. Let's see who could take what for now, and then we'll see what happens in the tournament. But like I mentioned, the Brazil, they have to play. They have the same group as Colombia, so I think that just that going from the top. But Brazil and Colombia always have some pretty legit games. But there's something to be said about Brazil in terms of their current form and what that might translate to into the tournament. So how do you feel about that? Because like Argentina, the talent that they have on that roster is absurd, and even the youngest kid might be the one that everybody's most interested in right now, which is even crazier.
I mean, talent wise, yeah, you can never drop Brazil off because of the talent itself, because of the history, because of the name. Absolutely agreed. But as you mentioned, form wise, if people haven't been paying attention, Brazil after Tite left, they had two interim coaches, and now Dorival Jr. finally stepped in, and this was only his fourth match, right? So he's still trying to put his team together. On top of the fact that many of the big guns, the big stars, the big names, Neymar being out injured, like now you have these younger players who are unbelievable still and have all the talent in the world, but now they have to be leaders, right? You look at Vinicius Jr., who had an amazing season with Real Madrid, winning La Liga, Champions League. This is his first time that he actually has to be, not the sidekick. He has to be that leader. Is he ready for it? I don't know. That's the problem, and that's the problem. They don't have that experience, I guess you could say. That hierarchia that can win you matches. The talent is there, but as we saw against the U.S., there's still things that they need to work out. And as you mentioned, they have Colombia in their group, and Colombia is no joke right now.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Brazil, like you mentioned, it's always high stakes and pressure with them. And Neymar was a perfect name and perfect person to kind of live through that. But you saw how much that even weighed on him in times when he wore the Brazil national team jersey, and it's not easy for those players, man. Like they have to always live up to this golden generation of some legends that came before them, and we just haven't seen it. Like I don't know if that will ever be replicated again because of how good those Brazil teams were back in the day. But like you mentioned, Vinny is a hell of a player. Talent, does he have it in him to kind of put that team on his back when they need it in those tough moments? Because they're going to need somebody to step up and be that leader in a tournament. Like games are, one-offs and qualifiers are different things. But like we mentioned in the qualifiers, they haven't really shown that too much either. So when it gets tough for them, who's going to kind of step up and be that catalyst to kind of propel them in those tough moments? I think it's going to be a tough tournament for them. Not in terms of they won't get out of the group or they won't make a run. Like I fully expect them to be there somewhere in the quarterfinal, semifinal run. But at the same time, like teams, and this is we've talked about this before too. There's sometimes has to be a changing of the guard, and it's a lot of teams that happens naturally, and a lot of teams it does not happen naturally. Whether it's changing coaches, and you know very well whether it's changing coaches, changing personnel. So maybe this is that transition period for them, which gets me really scared about the World Cup, because if this is a transition period for them and they're able to kind of test themselves in Copa America and kind of integrate some of these younger players, whatever that team looks like from now to 2026 is going to be pretty scary to me. So Brazil has an interesting tournament in front of them.
Copa America. What I like about Copa America is for those teams like Brazil or player other teams that are changing coaches or those it's a good test because you actually have a good amount of time, almost a month, with your team to work on formations, tactics, all that. Find out who your starting 11 should be for those qualifiers and all that. So yeah, I agree. For the World Cup 2026, it could be scary because Brazil is now going through that change.
Absolutely, and going through a change with that talent pool and that ability, it's a very great luxury to have when
Yeah.
you're Brazil. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. A team I want to talk about, Uruguay, because then you talk about Argentina, Brazil. Okay, those are like the top two in South America traditionally. Then you talk about like what comes after that. And Uruguay is a team that is kind of the same. They have a lot of talent. I mean, Luis Suarez is on this roster, but how much they're going to actually count on him is probably not going to be too much compared to how Argentina uses Messi. But it's a team that has the talent, that has been under a very good direction under the new coach, and just things that they do, especially tournaments. They're always a tough team. It's never an easy out. What do you think about Uruguay as the tournament gets ready to get going here?
When they hired Marcelo Bielsa, I said it. I mean, it's gonna go one or two ways. It's gonna either go really bad or really good. But I always thought that Marcelo Bielsa, because of his coaching style, the way he is, he's nicknamed El Loco for a reason. I thought this team fits exactly how he would want it. A hardworking team, like that's hard. That's that garra charrua. So it's you can see by the results in the Commonwealth qualifiers that it's worked to a T what he's wanted. Having Luis Suarez, like you mentioned, is great, but not necessarily needed, at least for the starting 11. But it's a great sub to have. Imagine that, like Suarez coming in the 80th minute could still score you a goal. You know what I mean? So I think Uruguay is definitely for me in the top three of competitors in this tournament right now, going into this tournament. I think the question for me is more on Darwin Nunez, because now, again, like we mentioned, Luis Suarez he's not that leading role no more. Cavani obviously already out. So now we need to see, is Darwin Nunez that guy? We've seen that he can be. But can he do it consistently? Can he cement his place in La Celeste now?
And the thing with me about Uruguay is it's always attracted me with them, and they're so fast. Like that team is just very fast, and that's how they like to play, man. It's like we're gonna go head up and we're gonna see if you can run with us. We're gonna open the field. We're gonna just send runners. But that switch of being such a quick team and then being able to bring Luis Suarez into a game, and he's gonna slow things down methodically, just naturally. It is a hell of a card to have in your back pocket. How they use that, we'll see. But yeah, Uruguay, I agree. Top three probably should be talked about more as a favorite to win the tournament, because, like I mentioned, when they get into these stages, they know exactly what they need to do. Just in general, like you said, that grit that they have, and it's never an easy team to play. So that team makes me nervous. They always have, and I think they always will, for sure.
I've seen big channels, call them dark horses. I think they're not a dark horse. They're legit contenders.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Speaking about legit contenders, la selección de Colombia. Man, I love that Colombia smashed on the U.S. that way, because so many people were like, "Oh, I think there's just a narrative over Colombia after like, the 2014 World Cup. Everybody's like, yo, great team. And 2018, great team. And then it's like, oh, they didn't make the 2022 World Cup. And people kind of just like forget. And once again, for people that don't pay attention, the CONMEBOL qualifiers will tell us a lot about teams' forms and about what's going on and about players and different things like that. But ever since Nestor Lorenzo took over, it's always been a little bit of a how is this going to translate? And we've talked about it, like I mentioned. The amount of talent that this Colombia team has is unreal. It just doesn't make any sense to me how they're not dominant in the final third and not able to put a lot of goals in the net, which I feel like is still kind of a problem. It's laughable coming off of a 5-1 to even say that, but uh, there's something there with this Colombia team that feels a little different to me. I think maybe because Lucho Diaz is playing at an elite level on the world's game that he's known everywhere now. And then you still have a little bit of that veteran leadership that you had from the past, where people talk about James and his club career. Like whenever he puts that shirt on, he still has it. I have not yet to see anything different. So you know where I stand about that James conversation. But they're just a well-rounded team in general, defensively really good. Midfield is really good, and they have. I mean, I look at their bench every time we play, and I'm just like, wow. Like to have people like Quintero, Sinisterra on your bench, it's like Duran, Asprilla. It's an embarrassment of riches really for this Colombia team. And I think after not making the last World Cup, knowing what's at stake here, knowing that Colombia's coming in with this streak, this unbeaten streak that dates back to I don't even know when. Like they're going to be hungry to show something, and the fact that Brazil's in your group, if you could win your group, which they should, I'm not going to say they will, but they should. If they could win their group, they know it's potential U.S. in a quarterfinal matchup. You just came up with 5-1 against U.S. I know maybe I'm thinking as a fan, but if you're a player looking at how this may pan out, and you know the support they're going to get in Copa America because Colombians show out everywhere, especially in the U.S. Listen, man, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but maybe we're being a little slipped on, which I don't mind. But what are your opinions on that?
No, I think they're hungry. They're hungry, right? They obviously, like you said, the failure of not making to 2022 World Cup, and that we talked about this off air. That 7, 8, 9 game run where they couldn't score a single goal. It looked bad. It looked bad. And again, we talked about this off air when Nestor Lorenzo came on. I told you I think he's a great coach because he was coaching in Peru at Melgar at the time, and he left Melgar in one of the best situations that they've ever had in that moment. The way they played, the style they played, I said, man, if he brings that same thing to you guys, it's gonna be great. And clearly, it's shown up. You guys have always had the talent. I think Colombia's always had the talent. They just needed to come together. I don't know, glue it all together pretty much. And I think now they're showing that right now. 22 game unbeaten run, man. It's like, yeah, they're not regularly scoring, 5 goals every game, but they're creating enough opportunities for them to at least be able to outbeat other teams. So I think yeah, that and the fact that, like you mentioned, they have Brazil in their group, and that's always. I'm not gonna say it's the biggest rivalry, but it's always, you got that little itch that you want to beat them because of their name, their history. So I think that will be good, and I think they have the potential to be number one in that group, and they are also a top 3 for me.
Yeah. I think the one thing about Brazil being in the group, which I love because I've talked about this with friends on the side, like Brazil Colombia is the last game of that group. So it's like there's a very honest reason that could be them being 6 points at the top of the table when they go into that game at Levi Stadium up here in California. So that game could mean a lot to both sides. Like that, those are the type of competitions you want to see because that's a matchup that could potentially be a semifinal or whatever the case may be. But that's just a matchup that is going to be of that caliber to see where they are. And Colombia's coming off of beating them in qualifiers, and that was like a huge moment too. I mean, it wasn't recent, but it was kind of the most recent, I guess, between the two. But the one thing I will say about Colombia too is Luis Diaz, man. Like he's such a good player, and he still hasn't even like hit that, I think, stride or even potential that he shows with Liverpool. Like some of those runs that highlight tapes that he's taken on 3 Man City defenders, like you haven't even seen that too much yet with Colombia. And I think it's about time for that coming out party, that showing out party for him, where he's gonna make this tournament his. And we've seen it like in the last Copa America, he was a good player, but there was still a maturation process that he needed to go through at the time. I think it could be a very good tournament for him if Colombia plays the right way and does not try to cater to him too much and finds him naturally instead of trying to force the ball to him, which they don't do too much of. So I think that I don't want to sound biased, but I agree with you. I think this might be the best chance Colombia has had to win Copa America in a while. So I'm excited to see what they could do. I will be at every game they play in the tournament. So if you're out there, hit me up because I'll be around. Now I want to ask you about one surprise team out of maybe even the ones that we mentioned, but these are not really surprising teams, which is why I framed it this way. You know, when you have your own show, you set up the topics the way you want. It flows. Come on, man. But what is a surprise team for you in this tournament? Because there's something to be said about some of the teams that people are not necessarily speaking about that could shock some heads.
I think for me, like when you think about surprise or these dark horses, I think of the first one that comes to mind is Ecuador. Ecuador, I think they have an insane amount of talent as well. The one thing that's always worried me is their new coach. You know, I think he lacks still some experience, but they've done well in the Commonwealth qualifiers, right? They're doing well, right? And now in their friendlies, they're handling what they got to do. So I think for me, it's gonna be them. They are the only ones that I could see making a decent run outside of obviously the four that we mentioned: Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay. Ecuador probably would be my in that fifth spot for me.
And if you look at Ecuador's group, I mean, Mexico, Venezuela, Jamaica, that's not like that's a group that they could easily win. I don't want to like this sound like I'm discouraging other teams, but when you look at the level of competition, I mean, none of these groups are easy. We know that,
Yeah.
but that's a group that you could see them coming
Oh yeah,
out of that group on top, and then being like, oh wait, hold on, they might have to run into Argentina in the semifinals or something
right.
like that. So it could get interesting. It get interesting. I think they have a very talented roster as well that can make some noise.
And if I had to say one more, I even think Venezuela. I'm sorry for the CONCACAF sides, really, but I like we've seen the games, and it's just the showings that they've put out is not to me. It's not convincing yet. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Venezuela's going to go and smash on anyone, but from what I've seen in the qualifiers, what I saw against them against Italy in Miami, I think they could beat a lot of those strong teams.
Yeah, I like once again to that group. I mean, you have Mexico and Jamaica in there, and Concacaf has not had necessarily the best showing of, hey, we're gonna get into this tournament and kind of cause some trouble. I think the U.S. benefits, and we'll get into the U.S. in a second, but I think they benefit a little bit from their positioning as well in the tournament and the bracket, at least in the group stage. What Canada's on my mind because Canada has a very talented soccer team, and I was for sure banging the drum before the 2022 World Cup and was like, yeah, Canada's gonna make some noise because we saw them go through those qualifiers and really take CONCACAF for a surprise. Things got rough in the World Cup, obviously. They had a head coach change, but the fact that it's Jesse Marsh, which is obviously a very polarizing figure in this region of the world, but I don't know, man. It's something about it. I don't think they're gonna make a run in this tournament, but something about them, that talent pool, a new coach makes
Yeah.
me kind of believe that hey, they might have a pretty decent little group stage and be able to get out there into a quarterfinal and see what happens. Because once again, I think when you have a talent pool of that caliber, when you're able to kind of look at these past experiences and learn from them. I mean, it's like I mentioned, it's two different coaches, but they like you mentioned with Colombia are going to have something to prove. I don't think either of and many of the CONCACAF teams are going to have much to say in the tournament in like on a bigger picture, but I don't know, man. Am I naive to say like Canada might be the best Concacaf representative in this tournament? I don't know. Maybe I'm still banging the drum a little too hard.
If and that group is obviously of personal interest to me because Peru is in there, but even at this point, I think what Chile is doing right now under Ricardo Gareca, I think is impressive to me, and and I just don't know. I don't see how they get past Chile and Argentina.
Yeah, I mean it's like you mentioned, Chile for sure. Gareca, we know is a great coach. He worked wonders for Peru. There's I don't know. It's like that first game you fully expect Argentina to win that game, right? And it's like if Canada could salvage a draw and either that game or a game against Chile, like there's something about that team that still I hold on to. Maybe it's because a lot of those players I get to see often in MLS or in different clubs they're playing in, but I don't know. There's still something there. I'm not going to confidently say
Yeah,
that that I believe in them to make a run, but if they do, I'm gonna come back to this and be like, I told y'all so.
I think that Group A is interesting right there between Chile, Peru, and Canada. Because I honestly, if you had to tell me right now who's going out second, obviously Argentina I think won, but second, I honestly right now I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't.
that's the I think that's the fun part of tournaments where it's like, okay, you know who's probably going to win the group most of the time, especially if you're in
Yeah.
the group Argentina. But then that second spot is like, all right, this is where the real fight happens. And then if you really want to get into the weeds, goal differential and different results make a big deal. But yeah, we'll see what happens with them. We'll touch on the U.S. quickly because the 5-1 against Colombia had everybody up in arms, and the Greg Berhalter conversation will never go to bed. And they bounce back, and it's a 1-1 against Brazil, which it was better for sure. But I still think if you look at it from a big picture, like the team, it is not really threatening in the final third. Like there's not too much fluidity in the attack to me, and there should be more. It's always been a conversation about who's the best nine for them, and listen, the Pulisic goal is off of a set piece, which is crazy because we haven't seen him take any good set piece for the U.S. and feels like forever. Probably a goal that shouldn't have happened because he just kind of hits it straight at the goalie. But it was a nice goal. Let's not take that away. But to be able to kind of hold your weight and bounce back in that way, there's things you could take away from it. I don't think. I think I was sipping the Kool-Aid a little too much with this team maybe a few months ago. And from what I've seen, I just don't think they have enough talent in this tournament to really make a run. But they get out of their group and they're gonna probably either see Colombia or Brazil, which are the two teams they just played. So there may be something there where they could say, "Hey, man, we know we could learn from these mistakes." They are the home team, so you have to mention them. What are your thoughts about the U.S. and what they could potentially do in this tournament?
Um, I mean, you know, you hit spot on a lot of the stuff, right? The question marks with Greg Berhalter, the question marks with their transition, right? In that final third, I think they have a pretty good midfield, right? But there's still something lacking, that transition, that ball into the final third. I feel like either you need to switch the system to find someone that's more creative in the middle, or or find someone, maybe Christian Pulisic playing in that number 10 role. I know a lot of coaches don't use it as much no more, but I think it would solve more problems than not. Um, right now for the US, I think coming out of the group stage, I think is doable, right? The only I think a second, obviously, because Uruguay is in that group. Um, but again, I don't think after that, when they come out of there, they got Colombia or Brazil. And let's be honest, yes, Colombia. I think Colombia, the 5-1, cool. Maybe they do learn their lessons, but I think Colombia is that much better than the U.S. right now in this moment. Now Brazil, yes, they tied them, but again, Brazil's also going to learn their lessons from that game too. And even though they're going through their all tribulations, they're gonna. I feel like that. Again, this is speaking on history and name. They should be able to overcome the U.S.
Sure. Yeah, and then like you mentioned, like Panama, Bolivia should be a good, let's say, warm up for the U.S. to get to
Yeah,
the finals as second in that group. But you have to think about, like, I think like you mentioned, their midfield is very talented, and if they have Tyler Adams, I don't know how healthy he'll be. It makes a big difference because he kind of moves the gears in that midfield. Like Weston McKennie, great player. Like they have a very talented team in that midfield. To me, it's defensively where, like, even as much as we talk about offensively, they don't have necessarily that spark at certain times defensively, man. Like Tim Ream is like is not doing it for me. You have Walker Zimmerman with the Olympic team right now, so that's a piece that you could even have to plug in there. And then when you look at the subs, you're like, there's nobody there is
yeah,
stepping in to make an impact. You look at the wings, like Joe Scally has been good. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything that he hasn't. Like he's been really good, but he's gonna be up against it basically every team he plays from South America. And if you're looking at a potential quarterfinal matchup against Colombia, Brazil, like
that
Vini,
wing play.
Juarez, they're like, oh yeah, like it's we going, like I'm not gonna say he didn't hold his own in these friendlies, but when you put that level of, I guess, stakes at it, and then the other part that we have to talk about too is like, sure, they're the home team, but they won't be against either of those two sides. I guarantee that
Yeah.
that game would either be, I think, in Vegas or in Phoenix, and I 100% guarantee you that yellow will drown the crowd, regardless of what yellow it is. So it is going to be interesting for the U.S. because there's so much on this team, and I just think the overreaction is always a little bit exaggerated with them. But it's about that time, because if they have a bad tournament, they have to make a very quick decision on what they want to do, because the World Cup is the tournament for them. Like, it's not a tournament that they're expected to win, but it's a tournament that they're expected to succeed in at some level. This might be a little different because it's less teams, it's faster, it's a lot more difficult. But in the World Cup, it's an expanded group. That's a tournament that they really need to make some strides in and be like, yo, this is the progress that we're making as a football country. If it's not linear, if you see a little bit of shakiness in this Copa America process, especially because they don't have to qualify for the World Cup, then there has to be those questions really asked about Berhalter and what they want to do in the future. So I'm not on that boat yet of like set everything on fire, but this is gonna be very telling to see what happens to them in this tournament. Like, if they go to the quarterfinals and they lose to Colombia and Brazil, I think that's kind of like their benchmark to believe that they should be in the semifinals of this tournament. I think it's definitely naive, but at least get through the group convincingly, right? Like, you
Yeah.
mentioned, probably going to be number 2 in that group. But hey, man, even in that Uruguay game, like, put up a fight, like, do something, like, show that you guys can compete with teams of that caliber. And then, because if not, then we're kind of just running in the same flat circle with this team.
Yeah, I think no matter what, this tournament is something that they need to learn from. Figure out exactly the iron out the kinks per se, right? Like you said, put up a fight against Uruguay, because against Panama and against Bolivia, you guys should, the U.S. should be able to handle business.
Sure, I agree. And the last team we'll talk about, and it's your team. We'll talk about Peru, man. I'll give you the floor. I don't even want to know how to preface it. I just want your takes on Tu Amado Peru.
Man, Peru. They're going through a lot of changes. Got a new coach, um, changing up the system, figuring out what's the starting 11. You have players that are over 30s, or some players that are without clubs. And so that's the problem. And now, no Renato Tapia in the tournament. That's a big hit for us as well. So right now the expectation with Peru is very low. Uh, that's just the honest truth. I think a lot of people are taking it, and even myself, I take it more as this is an experience for Sati, the coach, to iron out his team, iron out the system, and be able to bring that over to the qualifiers, which is obviously at this point more important for Peru, because right now this is a team that's not set, and I just don't see them making a run in Copa America, even though historically Peru is probably the team that's done the best in this short tournament to at least make it to quarterfinals or even the semis. So there's that. The history is there, but it would be amazing for me to see that. But right now, with what we've seen in the friendlies, I just don't see it. It is very unfortunate, but yeah.
No, and like we mentioned, man, that group is no joke. Argentina, Canada, Chile, like, that's a tough group. Those games are all going to be very interesting to see how they shake out. But yeah, like you mentioned, for Peru, it's obviously looking to the future and seeing what they could kind of build on and do. But they do have a way of surprising people in this
Oh,
tournament. They've always have. So, but Chile has also had that. So we'll see how that goes. And I hit you the other day about El Pulpo, like, he hasn't had a good season for Orlando
no,
City this year. It's been very shaky for him in net. But there's certain players they put on that national team jersey that I think when guys puts on that Peru jersey in net, all is well, all is fine, and he's probably going to be tested alive if things pan
absolutely.
out the way they should.
Absolutely. And that first game is probably the one that's going to be the most important for Peru, because they go up against Chile first, which, that's kind of a rivalry there. And the fact that Chile now has Ricardo Gareca, which is Peru's ex-coach, is just, man, it's just hitting all the feels right there.
That's the beauty of this tournament, man. There's so many storylines. There's so much that teams mix and interchange, and coaches, and it's lovely. And then you have teams that are teammates on different clubs, and they might see each other in different stages of this tournament. So it's a blast. And to end, like, just in on that note, what's your overall excitement about this tournament? Because we always talk about the growth of soccer in this country, and the fact that the tournament's here again. Like I mentioned off the top, maybe the hype and the promo hasn't been like it was in 2016, at least to
Right.
me. But once this gets going, and especially because it coincides with the Euros, like, I think that this tournament for sure is the one that's a little more intriguing to the casual fan, because of the nature of the teams in it, because of the stars in it. But what is just the overall excitement? Because I know you'll be at some games yourself. I'll be at many games myself, hopefully. So, what's your excitement about it?
No, for me, I mean, I'm personally excited, ecstatic, honestly. Like, even though I won't be able to be at all the Peru games, I'll still be working some games here and there and doing some stuff on the side. But just the fact that you get to see your national team in the US where you live, that's amazing, right? There's obviously little problems here and there. I think most importantly, and I think anyone can say yes, is the fact of the prices for casual fans. The price, some of the prices are up there, right? Any game with Argentina, Brazil is up there, and obviously the cost of the traveling, right? That's a big thing. But as far as the excitement, you're gonna be able to see some of the biggest stars in Europe playing here in the U.S. for almost 3.5 weeks. That's amazing. Like that's amazing. And yeah, this is just a warm up for what's to come in the US because now next year you got the Club World Cup, then after that you got the World Cup. So it's gonna be amazing. I'm honestly ecstatic just to be able to be here and work it.
Yeah, I will have my my suitcase packed up and ready to go within the next few days because I'm ready to hit the road, man. Wherever Colombia takes me out, I'm going. But yeah, it's amazing, it's an amazing thing. 2016 was a blast. I just remember the fun of the amount of games. I think I went to like 5 games that tournament, all as a fan, and just checking out some of these. I'm hoping to go to most of these as a fan too, but if I do go out of work capacity for anything like that, that's also pretty cool as well. But just having that ability, like you said, to watch some of these stars on this stage and in these stadiums and on, with all these eyes around the world on them, it's gonna be a fun thing, man. And yeah, we'll keep tabs on Diego, man. He'll be doing a lot of work during the tournament. Look out for what he has going. Make sure you hit his socials up. I will once again link them. Actually, you let the people know where they can find you. So if they're just listening on the Spotify or Apple, they could tap in with you as well.
Yeah, so on Twitter or X, you can find me on there as D Montalvan, my last name. So that's again D Montalvan. On Instagram, D Montalvan. I'll be doing a lot on Instagram right now. YouTube, Diego Montalvan. So yeah, man, just lock in because it's gonna be a fun summer.
Se vienen
Se
cositas.
vienen
My brother,
cositas.
I am very happy to have you on once again, first of all. And I can't believe we got through this without taking a shot of guado. So that means that we have both grown a little bit, which is great. But man, thanks again. This episode was happening regardless. Like you mentioned, it was just about a perfect time to make it happen. And I think there was no better one than this one. So we'll touch base. I'll let you go because you have an important event to get to tonight. But yeah, we'll touch base and during the tournament, like I said, stay tapped in because we'll be all over the place and making sure that the content is out there for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once again, thank you, everyone that's listening. Thank you, Andy, for having me on. And that shot of guado, I'm sure we'll take it soon.
Soon, my brother. Soon. I'll see you in Miami for the final. Colombia, Argentina. Let's go. Hey, thank y'all for listening. If y'all tapped in, please subscribe, like, comment, all the good stuff. Until the next time, man. You know what it is. We out. Peace.